Hi guys, it's Debbie, and today I would like to speak about The Crow, directed by Alex Proyas. This film is not recent as it was released over 20 years ago, back in 1994, but I would still like to talk about it today because it is one of the films I've always enjoyed rewatching many times, a movie which I have appreciated since my teenage years and which is particularly emblematic of my thoughts back at the time and of my general taste. The Crow is actually actor Brandon Lee's last work. He portrayed the main character Eric Draven, but he actually died on set while filming this movie, making this work also a tribute to him, his love life and his art. The Crow is the very dark story of a group of ruthless criminals which every year on the night before Halloween increase their number of violent crimes by setting fire to numerous buildings around town and in general committing heinous crimes which include murder and rape. In particular in this story they attack Eric and Shelley, a loving couple and soon to be husband and wife. Shelley is brutally assaulted and raped by all the members of the gang, and Eric is heavily wounded and pushed out of a window. They die in terrible agony, leaving a hole in everybody's heart as they used to bring smile and a deep feeling of joy to everybody in their derelict neighbourhood. 1 year later, Eric is woken in his grave and brought back to life by a mysterious crow, which grants him the chance to carry out his revenge upon those who mindlessly inflicted all this pain. At first, Eric is confused and in agony because of all the terrible memories that flash through his mind, reminding him of all the suffering he and Shelley went through. But he then embraces this new chance he has and sets off on his mission to punish his enemies. He then dresses with some of his old clothes and paints his face like a mask he used to own, completing the look of a phantom gothic vigilante, a somewhat dark beauty, an impression which is then recurring throughout all of the film's visual elements. The mysterious crow leads Eric through the city to his murderers, backing him up on his mission and helping him with the various obstacles and enemies he meets on his way. The city is a hellish nightmare of drug addicts, criminals and violence. We and Eric are disgusted upon seeing this assembly of citizens living a life of anger and resentment, dedicating their time to criminality, refusing their good intentions for a brutal underworld of terror. While the city is usually portrayed at night or in general as a very dark, cold, gloomy place, Eric's memories and his flashbacks of his life with Shelley are always rich in bright lights, cozy settings and loving gestures. We see familiar happy scenes like cooking, making love, joking about, laughing. The only other two characters which display a kind, loving attitude are Sarah, a young teen Eric and Shelley always used to look after, and Police Sergeant Albrecht, which was one of the first responders on the night of the attack and which never left Shelley's side until the last breath left her body. Sarah and Sergeant Albrecht soon start to notice strange events happening in the city as Eric moves on with his mission, and they start to put together the pieces of the puzzle. I personally think The Crow is a masterpiece of its own kind, starting from the main theme with one of the most profound and meaningful portrayals of an undying love I have ever seen on screen. The Crow underlines how true love is an eternal concept, how death is a mere physical obstacle, and that even if somebody passes away, keeping them alive in our heart is the best way for not letting them go completely. I remember watching this film years ago when I hadn't yet felt this concept of an undying love, of giving everything you have to one person without even a blink of the eye and receiving the same affection back. And now I have experienced this, I know this feeling, but I still doubt whether it could be a universal concern. I know I'm going to sound very old-fashioned saying this, but I believe love has become a somewhat overrated or even underrated concept in a society which has progressively become more attached to a fleeting skin-deep beauty instead of giving significance to deeper qualities and giving value to true love. Another important topic in this film is what Mark Renton from Trainspotting would define as choosing life. As I was saying earlier, most of the characters in the film have thrown their life to waste, preferring drugs, violence and a dangerous lifestyle. Even those who aren't straightforward criminals have let themselves be involved in this hellish scene. Sarah's mother spends her time becoming a junkie and being mistreated by all her acquaintances. She completely neglects her daughter and her own personal life and has a general numb distaste for the world surrounding her. Gideon, the pawn shop owner, is fully aware that many objects he accepts are either stolen or are the leftover of a brutal crime. And in general, even the background characters are just annoyed police officers, angry pedestrians and so on. In Eric's eyes, the only ray of sunshine in this grim environment was Shelley, who was always happy and eager to help others. In this decaying world, everybody else seems to have forgotten the beauty of life and the beauty of love. They don't appreciate the value of their existence. For example, Eric points out little things that used to mean so much to Shelley. I used to think they were kind of trivial, but believe me, nothing is trivial. Meaning we tend to focus too much on the superficial aspects of life, becoming stressed and infuriated about trivial matters, forgetting, as we often say, to appreciate the little things and wasting our existence. This brings on another very important topic, a more of moral doubt. Is Eric right in what he does? Is he justified in his vengeance? The film tends to stick by his side, arguing that his love and his grief were so strong and that the crimes that these men mindlessly commit on a daily basis are so heinous that their defeat would help society. In Eric's words, he died a year ago the moment he touched her. They're all dead, they just don't know it yet. Brandon Lee perfectly brought on screen that eternal rage that was devouring Eric's heart, making him immediately want to take out all his violent anger on his enemies. And although in certain scenes he tended to be a little overdramatic, I believe that this exaggeration is due to the gothic theatricality of the whole plot, which is necessary for Eric's darker appearance and to allow him and his intellect to stand out against the decaying background society, whose dialogues are just limited to screaming, taunting and swearing. But the film still leaves space for doubt, questioning whether Eric's actions would reduce him just to an outlaw, a criminal just like his enemies, and whether with his powers he should have worked alongside the police, which apparently already had stacks of information about these criminals. There's obviously also strong supernatural components in this film, the crow bringing back people from the dead, Eric being able to survive fatal wounds and so on, and we never get a clear explanation as to how all of this is possible. Usually without a deeper explanation to the film, we would tend to scorn the plot as something ridiculous and superficial, but in The Crow, the means by which Eric physically comes back to life are only secondary to the main concept of love and vengeance. The supernatural element is just more of a background to his quest and to the general situation in the city. Visually speaking, The Crow is a very dark film under every aspect, from the elements of edgy hard rock metal music to Eric and the other characters' goth darker appearance, from the grim looking settings to the constant rain, from graphic drug abuse to murder and torture. The film tends to set a general atmosphere of sadness and despair, making us bond with the character and share his pain. It makes us reflect on our own surroundings, on our own loved ones, and upon what we should start appreciating more and what we often give for granted. Many visual elements from this film have actually influenced other more famous works of art. For example, we can draw some comparisons with Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight. Skipping over the makeup and appearance, which I don't consider a reference, there are certain scenes which definitely present some similar features. For example, the scene in which Eric arrogantly interrupts the gangsters meeting around this long table. He suddenly appears joking and taunting the criminals, and although they rudely make fun of him because at first he doesn't appear as an immediate threat but rather as a delirious clown, it is evident that deep down they are terrified of him. This scene is very similar to another one in Dark Knight in which the Joker abruptly interrupts a very similar gangster meeting and is treated in nearly the exact same manner. Then I could also point out a rooftop scene in which the characters make a play on the words "let her go," as well as other small details. These similarities have sparked a huge debate surrounding both characters and to whether drawing a comparison is an exaggeration. In general, I think The Crow has a variety of features which could have influenced many darker elements in over 2 decades of cinema, and it left a lot of space for personal comparisons and different individual theories. For example, one could even argue that the Merovingian and Persephone from the Matrix trilogy are very similar to Top Dollar and Mika. I know The Crow recently has become an overquoted film which offers dozens of lines and images which many social media users would post next to 100 or fire emojis crediting Charles Bukowski, but I would definitely recommend setting aside these concepts and watching this film, as it offers a visually engaging story, a lot of food for thought, and a unique perspective on love and society which is still relevant today. Let me know what you think about The Crow with a comment here below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe for more movie related content. See you soon. Bye.